Rider Happy Hour. It's been a couple weeks. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Coming up on the show, we're going to look back a couple of weeks at the Banjo Bowl and then get ready for this weekend's game against the Calgary Stampeders. For those of you seeing me or tuning in for the first time, my name is Peter Klein. I was a radio host in Calgary for a very long time. Still am. Weird story. But they laid me off, and now I'm back doing freelance stuff with them because the media industry in Canada is severely broken. But I host the Couch Potato Diary, which you can get wherever you are consuming this bit of content. But the Riders are a team I focus on, and so I do a Rider-specific show. Try to do it as regularly as possible. That has not necessarily been possible the last little bit, but we're doing one today. So let's get right into it. Let's recap the game that we saw a couple of weeks ago. Again, it is a Rider team that is not making the plays when they need to. Down by 2, late in the game, need a stop. They do eventually get a stop, but they allowed Winnipeg to take a substantial amount of time off of the clock before this game wrapped up. And then that allowed Winnipeg to get that field goal, and it forced the Riders to have to try to push the ball down the field, and that ended the way it did, which meant that they needed a big pass, and it gets intercepted. Bad penalties all afternoon. I actually don't think this team is playing that bad right now. I don't think they're playing as bad as a 7-game winless streak would lead one to believe. I do think that there are some things, though, that need to be tightened up. And it's a little bit difficult because, on the one hand, like they are, again, a couple interceptions in this game. I don't think they're really Harris's fault, but they're playing, I don't want to say mistake-free football, but they're not getting the big plays that you need to make up for the mistakes. When you are just doing kind of the little dink and dunk and dink and dunk and dink and dunk all the way up the field on offense, you can't really afford to have the penalties that they are taking. And you kind of have to play perfect in every other aspect. You can't afford to give up big plays on the other side and then just slowly work your way upfield. You can't afford to have those interceptions and fall behind 10-0. Yes, they came back, but they had to do a lot to come back, and then it was only a little bit. And then Winnipeg was able to get past them again. The Riders are not getting enough big plays to help kind of offset some of the bad plays that they are having. Overall, I do think that A, this is a good football team, and B, this is a football team that is playing good football for the majority of games, but they aren't playing great football enough to make up for the bad football that's happening. Am I explaining myself well here? I hope I am. But either way, this is not a team that is getting enough kind of big plays here. Looking at the stats, I guess they are, oh no, that's opponent. Oh geez, that's not great. Saskatchewan has allowed the third most, third most opponents 30-yard completions in the Canadian Football League right now. Only Edmonton and Toronto have allowed more, but 30-yard completions for the Riders. They are fourth worst, in the league with 15. So again, like when you are not getting those big plays down the field, and then you are A, finding yourself in 10-0 holes 8 minutes into football games, and B, when you are kind of struggling to get big plays yourself on offense, when you're turning the ball over or just making some mistakes, it is really hard to catch up. And that has been some of the issues that this team has had. But overall, I thought Trevor Harris, again, his accuracy is so good. That pass that he had to Bain, where two guys basically ran the same route, and there's like 6 defensive backs around, and he is just able to pinpoint it in. Some of the stuff that he is able to do is just so impressive to watch from a Rider standpoint. And really, I don't think the 2 picks in that game were his fault. One of them, Johnson falls, and it's an easy pick for Ford. The other one, Ford makes a really good break and a really good read and comes off of his guy and makes a pick. Now, the throw is a little late, and when you are late and to the outside, those tend to get intercepted. But I don't think that it was I don't think it was a bad game for Harris. The one thing I do have an issue with, and this is with the Riders in general, I get frustrated with the amount of passes that this team makes short of the sticks on second down. And there are a couple of times where, like, Schaefer Baker is able to take one from in tight, and then he is able to kind of loop it around and get a first down. That they do get a few of those, but this team continuously comes up a couple yards short on second down. And part of that is other teams pressuring. And another part of this, and I know I talked about this last time, I believe we did a show here, but the Riders are the Riders are last in the league in yards gained on first down. They are also third last in the league in second down conversions. It was better in the Banjo Bowl, but we still saw a lot of times, and late too, when they're trying to make that push. Where it's just, okay, first down, run the ball up the middle. Second down, Harris pass for everything we need. Fix it. And it becomes very predictable. And again, it became a little less predictable in this game, which is nice. But it did become a bit of an issue. And it just gets a little bit frustrating because, again, this is not a big play offense. But when you constantly are needing 2nd and 5, 2nd and 6, 2nd and 7, and you're in these obvious passing down situations, it allows teams to gear up for you. And then when you combine that with the fact that this offensive line has been banged up since week 5, and it really does kind of throw things off for Saskatchewan. And again, it just all comes down to the way this team plays. Everything kind of needs to be perfect. And when you are in 2nd and 8, it's very difficult to be perfect. And teams, I think, have kind of recognized, like, okay, let's pressure, let's bring everyone up a little bit. They're not really going to beat us over the top with this. Harris isn't going to escape and beat us on a deep ball down the field. So we can kind of swarm guys and be able to get those stops. And it gets a little bit frustrating. Now, that being said, I don't want to go completely away from the run, and we'll talk about this in the game preview a little bit, because Hickson has looked good. Once he got rolling in that fourth quarter, there were a few good plays. I was really impressed with his vision. That there were a couple of times where it was very clear that the hole that was supposed to be there wasn't, but there was one on this side. And so, and maybe that was the design play. I guess I shouldn't see very clear. But just a nice little cutback lane and go. He was able to do that, and his vision to see those openings is good. He has a pretty good cut, relatively explosive, and has been good so far. Again, don't run him into the ground on first down, but there is a balance that needs to be had. That being said, again, the difference between this team and some others, those key plays in ball games, and when you have to be perfect, when you don't make those, it gets frustrating. He has a drop down the left sideline in the second quarter, I believe second quarter. It's a wheel route. It's designed perfectly. I don't think it ends up being a touchdown if he gets it, but it is a big play for a team that we just explained to you doesn't have a lot of them. And he just straight dropped it. And I get he's a running back, but you need to make that play. And the Riders, again, cannot afford to have miscues like that one. But the receiving group is good. MLS with a really big play deep down the field. That was nice to see him get going. Keaton Schaefer-Baker was, I thought, excellent in this game. Takes a short-ish pass and makes a really good gain down the field. He had a couple other good ones on second down to help keep drives going. Johnson slipped a couple of times, which was annoying, but he also comes up with a big touchdown. He has been good. Even a Joe was at least noticeable in some spots as he continues to grow into this offense. The one that is a little bit frustrating is Bain continues to be quite quiet. I do think he is really good. He is only averaging 24 yards a game in the last 4 games. I think he is dynamic, so it'd be nice to get him going a little bit. But again, this is the thing. They're moving the ball okay. A, sometimes they're not finishing these drives, and that's annoying. And B, it's again those big plays that just aren't there. But I do think that they are moving the ball okay, and that is the frustration with trying to figure out what is going wrong out in Saskatchewan right now. Looking at Trevor Harris's game log at the moment, just going to pull this up real quick. Boy, he's played for a very long time. So yeah, you look at it. Since he came back in week 11, 355 yards and a couple of touchdowns against Montreal. 190 against Toronto. That was a really ugly game. But he bounces back in Labor Day with 368 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Bombers. And then in the Banjo Bowl, 287 yards, a couple of touchdowns. There are some interceptions mixed in there as well. But they, again, moving the ball well. It is just at these big moments in games, things just keep happening, and the turnovers have been really brutal at different times as well. Defensively, they kept getting beat underneath a lot. I understand, like, you're in a tricky situation there, right? Because you can't just back all the way up. and leave the underneath stuff there, but you can't all just like overcommit to dump passes to the running back and then leave Dembski and all those guys over the top open and leave that layer there. So it is a tricky balance, but it does seem like every other team, when you throw it underneath, they can still at least swarm and get you stopped for 7-yard game. But when it happens against the Riders, it's like a 12 or 15-yard play. And so it just seems like they are a yard or two too far back, and that is allowing things like what happened on the 3rd and 13 to take place, where it almost feels like they're not quite aware of where the sticks are, and that is allowing guys to kind of get a little bit beyond that, make some plays, and get the first down marker and continue drives. It hurt against Toronto. There was a couple here against Winnipeg that really came back to bite them. Eventually, they did kind of, I don't want to say correct it, but they just weren't getting beat by it as much. They only allowed 26 points, and they were in some really bad spots, especially early in the game, off of the turnovers and whatnot. And it helped them, the defense helped them survive. And the run defense, again, was fantastic. I do the best bets piece for 3 Down Nation, which, boy, this has been a great year to do that. But doing the best bets piece for 3 Down Nation, one of the things that has kind of been a lock has been running back under props, and those just didn't come out by the time that I needed to get the thing published. But they have been phenomenal in that. They have done such a good job on Oliveira and basically everyone not named Javon Leake this season out in Saskatchewan. That front four is so good. They are able to get pressured with just 4 a fair amount, and the run defense has been really solid. I do think that a few more blitzes maybe need to be mixed in here, because when they do blitz, it does seem to be very successful, and it does seem to throw teams off a little bit. And it just felt like there was too many occasions where Collaros just had a beat or two longer than the Riders would have wanted him to have, and maybe a little bit more pressure could have helped up. Now, the Riders may have to change up things defensively quite a bit this week, as injuries are literally and figuratively hurting this defense. Carney and Lanier are both out for Saturday's game against Calgary. Also, Milligan is going to miss the game for the birth of his child. So that is 3 very big pieces on defense that the Riders are going to be missing, and that is going to sting a little bit. I don't really have a lot of faith on the Calgary offense to take full advantage of this, but this defense is going to be missing a few key pieces. So, what about the matchup against the Calgary Stampeders this week? Well, quite frankly, it's a must-win for Saskatchewan. At 5-7-1, they are very lucky that neither Winnipeg or BC have pulled away. You cannot let Calgary leapfrog you in the standings. And I get technically they would be tied, but at this point, Calgary would then have the tiebreaker, I do believe. And you cannot allow that to happen. You cannot fall out of a playoff spot right now. There is potential that by the end of the week, everyone in the West is going to be within 3 points of each other. A, that's insane. B, a win here, all of a sudden, because BC is idle right now, all of a sudden, you are a point out of a home playoff game, and if Edmonton beats Winnipeg, you're a point out of first place in the West Division. After playing dreadfully for 2 months, there is an opportunity for Saskatchewan to still have a home playoff game and maybe even a first-round bye. Now, it can go the other way, obviously. Saskatchewan loses here, then Calgary is tied with them, and then an Edmonton win and they leapfrog, and all of a sudden Saskatchewan's in last place. Also, you do have to worry about Hamilton now starting to sneak up, as they've played better in the last couple of games, and Chris Jones has that defense going. So, just win. It just makes life a whole lot easier if you can just go out and just win. All the issues that they've been having just need to get sorted out. The schedule isn't that bad to end the season. They do have a couple of tough games on there. But after this game, they have 1 more road game left. That's it. It's against Edmonton, who has traditionally not been great at home the last few years. But this team is a whole lot better than they were when they were racking up all those home losses at the early point in the season. But still, your toughest games left, I would say right now, are BC and Ottawa. Although Edmonton, certainly making a case for that. But BC and Ottawa right now, points-wise, whatever, are your 2 toughest matchups. You get both of them at home to close out the season. You get 1 more against Calgary in Regina at the end of the year. If you can be within striking distance of anything at that point, that would be huge. So the schedule does kind of shape up in a way where if Saskatchewan is this team they should be able to take advantage. If not, then maybe they are a little bit further away than we thought they were coming into this year. I do still think things are progressing in the right way. Maybe not in season, but just on a bigger scope. I do think that things are progressing the way that they should be. It is just not showing results the last 7 games, which is a weird thing to say in a league where you play 18 games. You know what? Just half the season hasn't really gone our way. But aside from that, it's been pretty good. That just seems like whistling past the graveyard. But I do think kind of long-term things are progressing the way you want them to. But if this does go south, or continue to go south, and like these last few games, what are they? They're 5-7-1, so there's 5 games left. If they go 1-4 in this stretch, then it does kind of feel like we're just back to where we started at the beginning of the year. And you're doing that with a 38-year-old quarterback, and with the backup who was supposed to be like the young one who comes in, kind of got worse as the season went along. So, you know, no pressure. It's just kind of the faith and direction of the franchise going forward that's on the line in the next 5 weeks. A little overstatement, but still. Offensively, I think this is going to be a Hickson game. Calgary is the worst run defense in the league. If you can get Hickson rolling, that is going to be huge. We talked a bit about it before. The Riders do like to run on first down. Also, teams like to stop them on first down. But if Hickson is able to kind of get that run game going and really start to put the Riders in, again, 2nd and 3, 2nd and 4 type of situations, that just makes life so much easier for Saskatchewan. And then you start to see those linebackers creep up, just a little boop over the head. Harris is so good at those touch passes and with his accuracy. And I think that's where you can really start to see this offense start to really shine. And so I do think this is going to be a very important Hickson game. Defensively, they have to clean things up on the short passes. And Calgary is a team that you have to do that against. The Stampeders are, they have more passing attempts in with a depth of target of 0 to 9 yards than any team in the Canadian Football League. Now, they have the 4th fewest in the 10 to 19 yard range, and they have the 3rd fewest passes that travel more than 20 yards. And the teams that are around them in that area, one of them is Montreal, who has used 3 different quarterbacks this season. One of them was Toronto, who also used 3 different quarterbacks this season. And one of them is Dukes, who was very conservative. And the other was Winnipeg, who have only used a couple, but one of them, for a not insignificant amount of time, was Strevler, who isn't going to be throwing those deep passes all that much, right? So I like you look at the other teams that are in that area, and you can kind of explain it away. Calgary, with the exception of one game, has had their starter in all season long. And so for them to be in the bottom half, bottom third of the league in those categories does kind of signal that there is a game plan here and a comfort level with those sorts of throws. And so those are the exact type of throws that Winnipeg kind of killed Saskatchewan with back in the Banjo Bowl. That is something that I think the Riders need to adjust to, especially with no Carney helping to cause problems in the pass rush. I do think that Saskatchewan, if you're going to cheat either way, I think you have to cheat up a little bit. And if Calgary is going to beat you deep, then give it to them and that's fine. But I do think you kind of have to not fully sell out, but you cannot let Calgary get those real momentum building drives going with all of those short passes. Calgary has struggled to run the ball this year, and the Rider defense is fantastic in stopping the run, as we discussed before. And so I do think that there is an opportunity to turn Calgary into a bit of a one-dimensional football team and force them into some of those longer throws that they aren't necessarily as comfortable with. Penalties do need to be reined in, especially on special teams, man. Like Saskatchewan in that game against Winnipeg had so many drives where they had to start deep in their own territory because there's a holding this or a this, that, or the other thing. There's some discipline issues on this team. And I mean, the one thing we haven't really addressed so far is the big blow up that happened at practice. I do think that this can be one of those, like, rallying point things that wakes everybody up. It does kind of feel like, not that I think Mace is a pushover, but I do believe that he would be maybe a bit more a player's type of a coach if we were going to categorize him. And again, I'm not there, so maybe I'm speaking well out of turn, but it just the sense you kind of get. And so it kind of feels like, okay, now he's mad. This is serious. We really got to lock this in. And sometimes, like, again, it can totally go the other way, where everyone's just like, oh, well, fuck that guy then, and it just completely falls apart. But I do think that sometimes just getting that shit out in the open can really, really help a team. And so it'll be interesting to see how the Riders respond. I do think they get the job done. I didn't put this game in my best bets because why would you? Neither of these teams have been overly predictable so far this season. But I do, if we're making a pick, I am going to go Saskatchewan -2.5. A couple other plays for those of you who are more gambling inclined. I'm going Hickson over 55.5 yards rushing, and I am going Dedrick Mills under 60.5 yards rushing. So that is it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you have only been joining Couch Potato Diary through the Rider Happy Hour, I do want to let you know that we are doing things a little bit differently from now on. Not with these. These are going to probably stay the same for a while. But we do have a new fall schedule. And so, as you can see here, we're now going live. Some of these need to be adjusted a little bit. There's going to be some changes coming to that, but that's coming up very, very soon. But we are going live, twitch.tv/primetimePK, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And also doing some video game streams on there as well. The Kick integration didn't go as smoothly as we wanted, but I figured out a couple of different ways to try things with that. So this is the new schedule going forward, and the Rider Happy Hour will continue to be on Thursdays throughout the postseason. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember to subscribe wherever you are tuning in. If you are watching, make sure you like it. If you're listening, make sure you leave a review. Thank you guys so much. Follow me on social media at Primetime Klein, and I will talk to all of you later. Have a great rest of your day, everyone, and enjoy the football coming up this weekend.